video opens with intense, dramatic music as the screen fades from black. I'm standing in my navy dress uniform, looking directly into the camera with the weight of everything I've experienced etched across my face. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. My younger sister Celeste thought she was just a college exchange student in Morocco. But when we found her chained in that underground compound 3 months later, she whispered 7 words that changed everything we thought we knew about our family. They weren't after me. Dex, they were after you. I pause, letting the gravity of those words sink in before continuing. My name is Dexter Harlow, and for 8 years I've been a Navy SEAL with Team 6. I've conducted operations in Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. I've faced down Taliban commanders and survived firefights that would break most men. But nothing in my military training prepared me for the mission. That would matter most, saving my little sister from a nightmare that I had unknowingly created. The camera captures the raw emotion in my eyes as I lean forward slightly. Celeste was 21, a linguistics major at Georgetown University with dreams of becoming a translator for international aid organizations. She had this incredible gift for languages, could pick up Arabic, French, and Mandarin like most people learn song lyrics. She was supposed to be safe in Casablanca, living with a carefully vetted host family, attending classes at Mohammed VI University, and calling home every Sunday like clockwork. My voice hardens with the first hint of the rage that would drive everything that followed. But the people who took her knew exactly who she was. They knew she was my sister. They knew about my military service, my security clearance, and most importantly, they knew that I would do anything to get her back. What they didn't know was that our family had been built on a lie that would make their sick game even more twisted than any of us could have imagined. I stand up, the camera following me as I move toward a wall covered with maps, photographs, and intelligence reports. This is the story of Operation Falcon, the mission that wasn't authorized, wasn't official, and wasn't supposed to exist. It's the story of how far a brother will go to save his sister, and how sometimes the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones shooting at you from across a battlefield. Sometimes they're the ones who know your family's darkest secrets. The music builds to a crescendo as I turn back to face the camera one final time. By the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why some missions can't wait for official orders, why some truths are more dangerous than any weapon, and why the most important battle I ever fought wasn't for my country, it was for my family. The call came at 0347 hours Syrian time while I was cleaning my weapon after a 12-hour reconnaissance mission outside Aleppo. My hands were still steady from years of training, but when I saw my mother's number flashing on that satellite phone, something cold settled in my chest. Patricia Harlow never called during deployments unless something was catastrophically wrong. "Mom?" I answered, already dreading what came next. The sound that came through the phone wasn't words. It was pure animal grief. My mother was sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe, making these broken, gasping sounds that I'd only heard once before. When we got word that my father's convoy had hit an IED in Iraq back in 2019, he'd survived that. Whatever was happening now felt worse. "She was supposed to call Sunday, Dexter." My mother's voice cracked like glass. "She never misses Sunday calls. Never. Something terrible has happened to our baby." My heart stopped. Celeste, my little sister who could speak 4 languages fluently but still called me when she had nightmares. The kid who used to sit on my bed when I was home on leave, asking a million questions about my missions while braiding friendship bracelets that I secretly wore under my tactical gear. "What do you mean she didn't call? Where is she?" "Gone." The word came out like a death sentence. The host family in Casablanca said she never came home from the university library 3 days ago. Her backpack, her phone, everything was still there. The Moroccan police found nothing. Nothing, Dexter. It's like she just vanished. I pressed my back against the concrete wall of our temporary base, trying to process what I was hearing. Celeste had been in Morocco for 6 weeks, living her dream of studying Arabic language and culture at Mohammed V University. She'd been sending photos constantly, pictures of herself in traditional markets, laughing with her host family, studying in beautiful courtyards covered with intricate tile work. Her last message had been typical Celeste. A selfie with her textbooks and the caption, "Arabic verb conjugations are trying to kill me." but the couscous here might save my life. The State Department isn't doing enough. My father's voice came on the line, steady but strained. They keep saying these things take time, that they're working with local authorities. Time, Dex. Our daughter has been missing for 3 days, and they want us to be patient. I closed my eyes, seeing Celeste's face the day she left for Morocco. She'd been practically glowing with excitement, talking about how she was going to use her language skills to work with refugee organizations, how she wanted to make a real difference in the world. She'd hugged me so tight at the airport that my ribs ached. I'm coming home, I said. Dexter, you can't just leave your mission. Watch me. The next 18 hours were a blur of heated conversations with Lieutenant Commander Zara Bellingham, my commanding officer and one of the toughest women I'd ever served under. Bellingham had climbed her way up through the Navy's ranks by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than every man who tried to hold her back. She didn't give emergency leave for anything short of confirmed deaths. Request denied, Harlow, she said, not looking up from her reports. Your team needs you here. The State Department and Moroccan authorities are handling your sister's case. Commander, with all due respect, your sister is a missing person in a foreign country. Tragic, but not a military matter. She finally looked up, her steel-gray eyes meeting mine. I'm sorry about your family's situation, but one missing college student doesn't justify pulling my best operator out of an active theater. I stood there, every muscle in my body coiled with the need to do something. Anything except stand in that tent arguing bureaucracy while Celeste was God knows where. Scared and alone. That's when Bellingham's encrypted phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then read whatever message had come through more carefully. Her expression shifted from administrative annoyance to something much more serious. Harlow, she said slowly. Sit down. Commander. I said sit down. Her voice had changed completely. This isn't just a missing persons case anymore. Intelligence chatter suggests your sister's disappearance connects to something much bigger. Something that might involve you directly. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I processed what she was saying. This wasn't random. Celeste hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone had specifically targeted my little sister, and somehow it was connected to me. 48 hours later, I was sitting in a sterile CIA briefing room in Langley, Virginia, staring at photographs that made my blood run cold. The woman across from me was Vera Thorne, a CIA analyst who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes had that hollow look of someone who'd seen too much classified horror. Your sister wasn't randomly selected, Vera said, sliding a manila folder across the metal table. We've been tracking communications from a terrorist cell operating out of North Africa. They call themselves the Heritage Reckoning. 3 months ago, they started using a code name in their communications, Operation Nightingale. I opened the folder and felt the world shift beneath me. There were surveillance photos of Celeste walking across the Georgetown campus, sitting in a coffee shop, even entering our family home in Virginia Beach during her last visit. Someone had been watching my sister for months, documenting her daily routines like she was a military target. They've been planning this since before she even applied for the Morocco program, Vera continued. The Benali family she was staying with in Casablanca, we thought they were thoroughly vetted. Turns out Rashid Benali has been funneling money to arms dealers across North Africa for the past 2 years. My hands clenched into fists as I stared at a photo of Celeste laughing with her host family, completely unaware that the people she trusted were part of a network that had targeted her. What do they want? You. Vera pulled out another set of documents. Remember Operation Desert Hawk in Afghanistan 18 months ago? You and your team captured Khalid Nazir, the Taliban commander who was coordinating weapons shipments across the Pakistan border. I remembered. Nazir had been running a sophisticated network that was arming insurgents across 3 provinces. We'd spent 6 weeks tracking him through the mountains before finally cornering him in a compound outside Kandahar. The intelligence we'd gathered from that raid had dismantled dozens of weapons caches and saved countless lives. Nazir is dead now, Vera said. Killed in a prison riot in Bagram 6 months ago. But before he died, he gave up information about his network's financial backing. Information that leads directly to the Heritage Reckoning and their North African operations. They think I know something about their funding sources. They know you interrogated Nazir personally. They believe you have intelligence that could expose their entire weapons pipeline across North Africa and the Middle East. Intelligence that could shut down millions of dollars in illegal arms sales and destroy their organization. Stared at the surveillance photos of my sister, trying to process the magnitude of what Vera was telling me. So they took Celeste to force me to give them information that could destabilize an entire region. Exactly. But here's the problem, Dex. Vera leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. The intelligence they want doesn't exist. Nasir never gave us anything about North African funding. The Heritage Reckoning is chasing ghosts, but they'll torture and kill your sister trying to get information you don't have. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. I stared at the photos spread across the table. My beautiful, innocent sister who dreamed of helping refugees, now trapped in a nightmare because these terrorists had built their entire operation on false intelligence. There's more, Vera said, pulling out one final document. We intercepted a communication 2 days ago. They're not just planning to trade your sister for information. They want you to come to them personally. They want the SEAL who captured Khalid Nazir to walk into their compound in Morocco, alone and unarmed. It's a trap, obviously. But they're holding all the cards. Every hour we delay, your sister's situation gets worse. The Heritage Reckoning isn't known for keeping hostages alive long-term. I stood up, pacing to the small window that looked out over the Virginia countryside. Somewhere out there, Celeste was probably chained in a cell, scared and alone, wondering if anyone was coming for her. The worst part was knowing that her suffering was entirely my fault. My military service, my missions, my choices had painted a target on her back. What does command say? I asked. Officially? We negotiate through diplomatic channels and hope for the best. Unofficially? Vera closed the folder and met my eyes. Your commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Bellingham, has been asking very specific questions about our operational capabilities in Morocco. I turned back to face her, understanding exactly what she wasn't saying, and unofficially, what are our options? That depends on how far you're willing to go to save your sister. Commander Bellingham secretly authorizes Operation Falcon, an off-the-books rescue mission disguised as a training exercise in Morocco. Dex leads a 4-man team including Finn Gallagher, demolitions expert, Chief Petty Officer Knox Rivera, medic and Arabic speaker, and Petty Officer Jace Whitmore, sniper and reconnaissance. The team discovers that Celeste is being held in an abandoned phosphate mine outside Marrakesh. Intelligence indicates she's alive, but being used as leverage to force Dex into revealing the location of a Taliban commander he'd helped capture in Afghanistan. Information that could destabilize the entire region if it falls into the wrong hands. The turning point comes when Dex realizes he must choose between protecting national security and saving his sister. He decides that family comes first, but devises a plan to feed false information to the terrorists while simultaneously rescuing Celeste. Key dialogue, Knox Rivera, studying satellite images. It's a fortress. Dex, 30-foot walls, limited access points, and at least a dozen hostiles. Dex, I don't care if it's Fort Knox, my sister's in there, and we're bringing her home tonight. The climax, big reveal or resolution. During the extraction, the team infiltrates the compound under cover of darkness. They locate Celeste in an underground cell, but she's barely conscious and severely dehydrated. As they prepare to extract her, she reveals the shocking truth. The terrorists weren't after military intelligence. They discovered that their deceased grandfather, Theodore Harlow, wasn't actually American. Their grandfather had been a Nazi war criminal named Theodor Heilmann, who escaped Germany after World War II and assumed a false identity. The terrorist cell had uncovered his real identity and planned to expose the Harlow family's Nazi connections to the international media, destroying Dex's military career and creating a massive scandal for the U.S. Navy. The real twist. Celeste had figured this out during her captivity when she overheard her captors speaking in German, a language she'd secretly been studying. She'd been protecting not just Dex, but their entire family's reputation and her brother's military future. Key dialogue, Celeste weakly gripping Dex's hand. Grandpa Ted. His real name was Theodore Heilmann. They have documents, photographs, everything. They weren't going to kill me, Dex. They were going to destroy us. Terrorist leader. In broken English, as the SEALs breach his position. Your family built lies on the bones of my grandfather's village in Poland. The aftermath, lessons and conclusion. The team successfully extracts Celeste, But the terrorist leader escapes with some of the evidence about their grandfather. Back in the United States, Dex faces a military investigation, but Commander Bellingham helps cover the unauthorized mission by officially classifying it as a counterterrorism operation. Celeste recovers physically but struggles emotionally with the family's dark secret. The siblings make the difficult decision to research their grandfather's past themselves, eventually discovering that while he had been a low-level Nazi administrator, he'd also helped Allied prisoners escape, a complex legacy that doesn't excuse his crimes but explains his desperation to start over in America. The experience strengthens Dex and Celeste's bond, but changes their understanding of family, sacrifice, and the weight of secrets. Dex realizes that sometimes the missions that matter most aren't the ones in your official orders. They're the ones that test what you're truly willing to fight for. Final dialogue. Celeste, months later, back at college. I'm changing my major to Holocaust Studies, Dex. If our family has this history, I want to make sure something good comes from understanding it. Dex, you were braver than any soldier I've served with, Celeste. Grandpa's choices don't define us. Ours do. Closing impact. The story ends with Dex visiting their grandfather's grave, not with anger, but with a complex understanding that people can be both perpetrators and victims, and that sometimes the most important mission is learning to live with the truth about who you really are. The extraction went perfectly until it didn't. We'd infiltrated the compound at 0230 hours using night vision and suppressed weapons, neutralizing 6 guards without raising an alarm. Knox had disabled their communications array while Finn planted charges at strategic exit points. Jace provided overwatch from a ridge 800 meters out, his voice calm and steady in our earpieces as he guided us through the facility. The underground tunnels of the abandoned phosphate mine stretched deeper than our intelligence had indicated. We moved through narrow passages carved from limestone, following heat signatures on our thermal imaging until we found the detention area. 3 cells carved into the rock face, heavy metal doors secured with industrial padlocks. I cut through the lock on the middle cell and pulled the door open. The smell hit me first, unwashed bodies, fear, and something else I couldn't identify. Then I saw her. Celeste was chained to the wall by her left ankle, her clothes torn and dirty, her face gaunt from dehydration. But her eyes were alert and angry, not broken. When she saw me, she didn't cry or collapse with relief like I'd expected. Instead, she grabbed my arm with both hands and pulled me close. "Dex, listen to me," she whispered urgently. They weren't asking about Afghanistan. They weren't asking about military secrets. They were asking about Grandpa Ted. What? I began cutting through her restraints, confused by what she was saying. Our grandfather. They kept showing me old photographs, documents with Nazi symbols. They know something about Grandpa Ted that we don't. Before I could process what she was telling me, Knox's voice crackled through my earpiece. "Movement in the main tunnel. Multiple hostiles approaching your position." I pulled Celeste to her feet, supporting her weight as she struggled to stand on legs that hadn't moved freely in days. "We'll figure this out later. Right now, we're getting you out of here." That's when the lights came on. The tunnel behind us flooded with harsh fluorescent brightness, and a voice echoed off the stone walls. "Dexter Harlow." "The famous Navy SEAL!" I spun around, positioning myself between Celeste and the voice. A man emerged from the shadows, tall, lean, with graying hair and cold, dark eyes. He spoke English with a thick accent that I couldn't quite place. "You may call me Hakim," he said, raising his hands to show he wasn't armed. "I am the leader of the Heritage Reckoning." "And you, Mr. Harlow, are exactly where I wanted you." "Dex," Celeste whispered behind me. "He's German." I heard him speaking German to his men when they thought I was unconscious. Hakim smiled coldly. "Your sister is very observant and very clever. She figured out our true purpose much faster than we anticipated." "What do you want?" I demanded, my weapon trained on his center mass. "Justice," he replied simply. "Your grandfather, Theodore Harlow, was not the American war hero your family believes him to be. His real name was Theodore Heilmann, and he was a Nazi administrator responsible for the deportation of over 3,000 Polish Jews to concentration camps." The words hit me like physical blows. "That's impossible. I have documents, photographs, testimony from survivors. Your grandfather escaped Germany in 1945 and assumed the identity of a dead American soldier." He built his new life on the graves of my grandfather's entire village. Celeste's voice was stronger now, filled with the intelligence that had always made her special. He showed me everything, Dex. Birth certificates, military records, even testimony from Holocaust survivors. Grandpa Ted wasn't who we thought he was. Hakeem reached into his jacket slowly, pulling out a manila envelope. Your sister spent 3 days studying these documents. She speaks German, you see. She could read the original Nazi records that proved her grandfather's crimes. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about the man who had taught me about honor and service, was crumbling around me. The plan was simple, Hakeem continued. Expose your family's Nazi connections to the international media. Destroy your military career. Show the world that America harbors the children of war criminals in its most elite military units. But then your sister surprised us, he said, looking at Celeste with something that might have been respect. She offered to help us document her grandfather's crimes properly, to ensure that the truth came out in a way that honored his victims rather than simply destroying your family. I stared at my sister in amazement. Even as a prisoner, even facing torture and death, she had found a way to turn our family's darkest secret into something that might serve justice rather than mere revenge. The mission had changed completely, and I wasn't sure who we were rescuing anymore. The extraction turned into something I never could have planned for. Hakeem didn't resist when we zip-tied his hands. He actually thanked us for listening to what he had to say. We flew out of Morocco with not just my sister, but with a man who had spent 5 years tracking down the truth about our grandfather's war crimes. The flight back to Norfolk gave us 8 hours to process what we'd learned, and those might have been the longest 8 hours of my life. Celeste sat beside me on the transport plane, her hand in mine, telling me everything she'd discovered during her captivity. Hakeem had shown her Nazi administrative records with their grandfather's signature, photographs of him in SS uniform, and testimony from 3 Holocaust survivors who had identified him as one of the officers responsible for liquidating the Sobibor ghetto in occupied Poland. He wasn't just following orders, Dex, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was telling me. He was efficient. The survivors said he took pride in his work, that he volunteered for the worst assignments because it meant faster promotions. I stared out the small window at the Atlantic Ocean passing beneath us, trying to reconcile the man who had taught me to throw a baseball with the monster described in those documents. Grandpa Ted had been my hero growing up, the immigrant who came to America with nothing and built a successful construction business, who taught me that hard work and integrity were the foundations of a good life. But there's more, Celeste continued. In 1943, he helped 17 Jewish prisoners escape from a work camp outside Warsaw. Hakeem found evidence that he was working with the Polish resistance for the last 2 years of the war. The complexity of it made my head spin. Our grandfather had been both perpetrator and eventual rescuer, war criminal and unlikely hero. He had committed unspeakable crimes and then spent the final years of the war trying to atone for them. Back in Virginia, the official debriefing with Commander Bellingham lasted 6 hours. The mission was classified at the highest levels, with Operation Falcon officially recorded as a successful joint training exercise with Moroccan Special Forces. Hakeem was quietly transferred to a witness protection program, where he would help document Nazi war crimes for the Holocaust Memorial Museum. The Heritage Reckoning Network has been dismantled, Bellingham told me as we concluded the debrief. Hakeem provided intelligence that led to arrests across 3 countries. Your sister's linguistic skills and cultural knowledge were instrumental in gaining his trust. 3 months later, Celeste made a decision that surprised our entire family. She withdrew from her linguistics program at Georgetown and enrolled in a Holocaust Studies graduate program at George Washington University. I need to understand what happened, she told me over dinner at our parents' house in Virginia Beach. Not just Grandpa's story, but all of it. The people he hurt deserve to have their stories told properly. Our parents had struggled with the revelations about their father. Mom went through weeks of therapy, trying to process how the man who had walked her down the aisle was the same person who had helped murder innocent families. Dad threw himself into researching genealogy, determined to find some record of good our grandfather had done. The hardest part was visiting Grandpa Ted's grave at Arlington National Cemetery 6 months after the mission. We'd learned that his military service record was fabricated, He'd never served in the U.S. Army. His burial there was based on forged documents and a stolen identity. "We can't change what he did," Celeste said as we stood before his headstone. "But we can choose what we do with the truth." That's when she told me about her new project. Working with the Holocaust Memorial Museum and Hakim, she was documenting not just our grandfather's crimes, but also the stories of the 17 people he helped escape. Their names, their families, their lives after the war. "Some stories don't have clean endings, Dex," she said. "Some people are both heroes and villains. But the victims deserve to have their stories told. And the survivors deserve to know that someone remembers them." Looking at my sister now, I see someone who faced the worst kind of truth about our family and chose to transform it into something meaningful. She didn't just survive her ordeal. She found a way to honor the people our grandfather had wronged while also acknowledging the lives he had saved. The mission taught me that sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you fight with weapons, but the ones you fight with truth. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is face a reality that changes everything you thought you knew about the people you love. Family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about choosing to stand together when the truth gets complicated, and finding ways to honor both the victims and the survivors of the choices our ancestors made.